Oh, the international break. You never fail to deliver misery, sadness, and pain. This is a very frustrated, angry, insert negative adjective here, Arsenal news show. Hello and welcome to the I Hate International Break Talk Show. Thank you so much, as always, for tuning in and joining me this morning on what is, I suppose, a nice balancing act because it's Friday. So there's a reason to be excited in some ways. You've got a weekend, work's over for many people, school's over for others. But it is a Friday that's it's a sad Friday. It's not a Good Friday. We're a long, long way from Good Friday, but it's certainly not that. Anything but that this morning. Good morning to all of you joining us live in the chat box. Thank you, as always, for doing so. Really appreciate your time. If you could, in this dire time of need, drop a like on the video. That would be heavily appreciated. And subscribe to the channel if you're new around here for more amazing Schadenfreude comedy. Tom, good morning to you, to Black Shine, Olawale, Damien, Red Star, Knowledge, Amira, Rich, Trina, Loga, Stephen, we've got Temi and Franklin, we've got Grantley Poo, Shari, Loga, Odarile, Arasuki, Shiv, Glenn, and Steve. Good morning to the rest of you as well in the chat box. Thank you, as always, for joining me. Really appreciate all of you. Johnny Bell as well in the chat saying YouTube doing us dirty. So there you go, Johnny. You got your little shout out. Yes, there's quite a few stories to talk about today, so let's not waste any time and jump into them. We're going to round up all of yesterday's international action. We start with William Saliba, who started in France's 4-1 win over Israel yesterday. As another really solid performance from him, starting in the back with Ibrahima Konate. And I think that, these games can have their benefits, of course, and we've talked about the benefits. In some ways they are limited, but Saliba played at left-sided centre half, which gives him some more experience playing on that left-hand side, gives Arsenal more variety, more versatility and an option when he's playing a different position. But with Saliba, the main stories have kind of been revolving around the Real Madrid story, and so I thought I'd tag this line onto the story with Saliba and on Jorginho as well, because Jorginho has been linked with moves away and also been suggested that he could take up a coaching role at Arsenal. Well, Fabrizio Romano has had his say when speaking with Caught Offside. He said the situation is that Jorginho is only thinking about this season. It's an important season for Arsenal, and I don't think all these links for Jorginho and Saliba are genuine and are good for the club. It's only the beginning of October. The season started just 50 days ago. Jorginho's full focus is on the present, on Arsenal, and not moving into coaching and not on making a move to Saudi Arabia, which is entirely unsurprising, but still positive, I suppose, all the same. And there isn't expected to be kind of any change in this stance for quite some time. Jorginho's coaching ambitions are well documented, well known. In fact, he practically practices that on the sidelines at every Arsenal fixture these days, if you watch him closely when he's on the bench. But he, at the moment, is seemingly and unsurprisingly focused purely on Arsenal. Now, Gabriel started and had a man of the match performance for Brazil in their 2-1 win over Chile. Really good performance from the centre half. Ended up with, I think it was something like an 8+ score on the ratings. So, yeah, a very good performance from him. And Gabriel Martinelli also came off the bench in that game. Brazil's squads, you look at it and you think, like, where is the Brazil of old in some ways? Like, Brazil used to be known as this team that would just blow sides away, and without question would be relatively comfortable beating any team. They'd have the best players in the world, and you look at their squad at the moment and it's really lacking in like significant quality. Gabriel stands out as one of their world-class performers, but it's a poor Brazil side. Maybe something needs to be looked at kind of the quality coming through the Brazilian ranks at the moment. But it's, even though they won this game, I think there is a question mark about their overall squad. Meanwhile, the face-off between Leandro Trossard and Ricardo Calafiori did not disappoint. In fact, Trossard was the star of the show. He got a goal and an assist during the game, and Calafiori was dealing with the fact that he, like he has many times for Arsenal, been in a team that went down to 10 men. The game ended 2-2 on the night, Italy taking a 2-0 lead before, of course, receiving that red card to Lorenzo Pellegrini in the 40th minute. Just 2 minutes later, Maxime de Kuyper scored before Leandro Trossard got an equaliser in the 61st minute. A lovely little touch on the flick on from a ball into the box. Really good movement from him. And overall a good performance from Leandro Trossard as well on the night. So positive for him. Calafiori, of course, involved and comes through unscathed, and hopefully that'll be the case moving forward, because that cannot be said for the headline story of the day and the most frustrating story of the day, which is that Bukayo Saka came off for England in the 51st minute with what is expected to be a hamstring issue. There is very little indication about the severity of the injury for Saka. He was spotted walking through the mix zone relatively comfortably after the game. However, Lee Carsley, when speaking after the match, didn't really provide much in the way of clarity. He said he's being assessed. In the build-up to the first goal, you could see he felt something in his leg. You could actually see images of him kind of like holding the back of his right hamstring and kind of kicking out to try and to test it. But he came off, and hopefully it's just a minor kind of strain and won't be seeing him miss any amount of football. The problem for Arsenal is, of course, they've got quite a few games, as we know, coming up. We play away at Bournemouth next Saturday, and then they've got a midweek game in the Champions League at home to Shakhtar Donetsk before we then host Liverpool on Sunday, October 27th. So there's 16 days between now and that game against Liverpool. We've then got away at Preston, then we go away to Newcastle, then we're away to Inter Milan, and then we're away to Chelsea. So we have a very tough run of games coming up, and hopefully this issue for Saka does not keep him out of the side all too long. But we certainly need to be careful in how we reintegrate Saka into the side. There's no way that he'll be playing that second game for England, of course. It'd be mental for him to do that. If even it was minor, he should be returning to Arsenal to get back into the Arsenal medical staff and the medical team. But yeah, at the moment, it's very up in the air right now. There is a lot of unknowns in this aspect, and we don't really know too much about what's going on in Saka's world. Hopefully we get some more updates soon, and we'll hear from Mikel Arteta next week, but it won't be until next week. So don't expect to hear anything in the way of updates, unfortunately, on this for quite some time, because it will be next week that we'll hear from Mikel Arteta. But if there is any other updates, or if anyone gets any inside tracks on this, you can be sure that we'll give you the information as and when that becomes available. What available to you, though, is, of course, NordVPN, bringing you the best safety and security network on the platform. The number one VPN service for you when you're traveling abroad, or perhaps even just using a local Wi-Fi service near you to keep yourself protected. You can get a significant discount off a 1 or a 2-year plan by going to nordvpn.com/Gooner and getting yourself a significant discount off a 1 or a 2-year plan. And there's 4 months extra thrown in free on top of that 2-year deal, and a 30-day money-back guarantee if you're not happy with the service. For whatever reason, I don't know why on earth you wouldn't be. But if you aren't, that is there to give you that peace of mind. The geolocation changing for your laptop, your mobile, or indeed your tablet is a must. So please do get involved in the latest offerings from our good partners at Nord. And not only that, but you can win a signed and framed Mikel Arteta Arsenal shirt. More than half the tickets for this competition, courtesy of Football Prizes, have already gone. So don't miss out on your chance. UK only, and there's, of course, some instant win prizes available too, including a Gabriel Martinelli shirt that is signed, a Gabriel signed and framed shirt, and a David Raya signed shirt as well. Best of luck to you all that get involved, and go down to the link in the description to find out more about our friends at Football Prizes. Right, let's go to part 2 and your questions right after this. Right, this is part 2 of the show where we tackle your comments, your thoughts, your queries, your questions in the chat box. And we have a little bit of a chat about some of the things that we've discussed and some of the things maybe that we've missed that you think that we should be talking about. So make sure you use a capital Q in the chat box and we'll try our best to get to them. Right, let's go to Master Cannon, who says Lee Carsley needs to go back in time and get in his hot tub time machine and not play Saka. Yes, I mean, we can all hope for miracles, but sadly, that is one that will leave us a little bit wanting. Cass says it was coming for Saka. He has been playing too much football and he has not had a proper break. I hope Arsenal and England agree that he should come back to Arsenal and rest. I mean, the whole it was inevitable type thing is always there. Like it's something that's always talked about. The idea that we overplay Saka, that Arteta overplays Saka, and that we don't manage Saka's minutes enough, and we need to do more to manage those minutes. I don't know if that is the case. You look at all the best players in the world; they play the majority of the games, if not all of the games. They barely come off the bench, or rather, they barely come back onto the bench. So I'm not necessarily sure. Could he play less minutes? Maybe. I think there are games where we're winning more comfortably that he could come off, but there haven't really been those types of games for us this season. You know, the Leicester game, we were there until the end of it. The Southampton game, we had to come from behind. So, of course, he was going to stay on longer during that game as well. And, of course, he provided the assist and got the third goal in that game. So, it's difficult to kind of manage those minutes and to say that, you're not going to play this game or I'm going to bring you off early when we need you on the pitch to help us score. It's really, really hard, to think. He obviously came off towards the end of the game against Atalanta. He played the entire game against PSG, but obviously we needed on the pitch for that. I just can't quite get my head around. I suppose the Bolton game, you could argue, was probably one that he didn't need to start in. We could have started somebody else, I guess. But he came off in 70th minute in that game. And of course, the game before that, he came off at halftime against Manchester City. So I don't think that it's the whole Saka's played too much football thing. It's just the way that football is. That's kind of where it is. Derek says, Tom, Declan Rice was horrendous last night and looks like he's been poor this season. I find it difficult to judge any of the performances last night for England because the way in which Lee Carsley set the team up was baffling. Had no balance to that team whatsoever. I saw people trying to justify it online last night, but goodness me, as an I say England fan, I am an England fan, but it's always Arsenal that comes first. I really struggle to try and analyze the performances of England and their players because it's so night and day from how they perform for their clubs. Rice has been good for us this season. I don't really get the point of view that he's not been good for Arsenal this season. I look forward to him moving back into that number 6 role and taking that forwards. Mikel Moreno moving into the midfield role alongside him. So I'm not going to overanalyze his performance last night for England because I just think it was a mental lineup. It didn't make any sense whatsoever, and England got punished for it quite rightfully. Loga says, should we be asking why we are getting more injuries on international duties than at domestic level? I mean, you can ask the question. You're not going to get an answer. I don't think there is necessarily an answer for that. I think it's probably going a little bit too conspiracy theory, to be honest. But we know that Mikel Arteta wouldn't have been watching last night. I think he said he'll be sitting behind the sofa, something to that effect, which is, it's just the way that it goes. Nick says, not so much of a question, but a statement that we really should have pulled Saka, Rice out of the internationals due to fatigue, like Palmer last month. Of course, we have seen Arsenal with Kai Havertz, with Partey. Neither of them have gone on the international break. Arsenal are in a very difficult position when it comes to this type of thing. We need to be conscious of the fact that nations want to use their players. The Nations League are competitive fixtures that they need to be involved in. So, I'm not going to get on the train of it being on Arsenal to pull them out because they can't always do that. I'd like them to for obvious reasons, but they can't. I'm never going to point the finger too heavily on them to not do it because we've already seen Havertz and Partey return to Arsenal before playing any matches. So clearly there's something going on there, but it's hard to tell your players not to represent their nations. They want to play for their countries. It's an honor to play for your country. And when you get called up, you want to do it. At the end of the day, It's just one of those where I look more so at the rule makers and the fixture makers and the competition makers than I do at the clubs and the nations themselves. Brendan says, TC, is there an actual point to the Nations League? Is there scope for it to be removed as a competition? It seems crazy to include this in the fixture list. So the point of the Nations League obviously allows for some nations better opportunities to qualify for international tournaments. It's removed friendlies, so that generates more interest in international football to a degree. That's the point of the Nations League, but I agree that it needs to be rethought. International football in general needs to be rethought. For every single time competitions like the Champions League, like the Club World Cup continue to expand, continue to get more games, more football for players, to the point where they are in interviews consistently saying that there is continuing talks and suggestions of player strikes because of, the issues that have come to the fore regarding this entire madness of continually increasing the number of games. I think the international scene is something that absolutely needs to change. The international scene needs to be lessened. The Nations League is a ridiculous expansion of and glorification of the friendlies. You can create tournaments, you can create qualification processes that are just not as rigorous. We don't need 3 international breaks between the start of the season and the end of November. It's madness that there's 3 international breaks. They're called breaks. They shouldn't be called breaks at all. They're called international messes because that's exactly what they are. It's a mess of increasing chance of injuries for players, increasing chances of fatigue, and increasing the chance of worse-looking football as the season goes on. So I think there should be changes to the way in which international matches are held and the qualification process for those tournaments so it doesn't hamstring other nations and those nations still get those opportunities to qualify, but there just needs to be far fewer games. Far, far, far fewer games. Chinho says, Tom, can we get Rice to pull out of England's next game as well? We keep getting new injuries. Very unlikely. Nell says, surely with all the players that have dropped out of these international games, league teams will start to encourage this more and more to save the risks. If not, they should be certainly thinking about it. Rob says, would it be worth waiting to see what the medical staff say before we melt down? Of course, but it doesn't stop us from having an opinion on something, does it? Boss says, I don't think it's the amount of games. It's about the referees and understanding that players kick at them and he has no protection in terms of Saka. Saka is kicked all the time. Yet a hamstring injury is not necessarily an impact problem. Hamstring injury is more to do with fatigue. Ant says, have you noticed how recently all of our players seem to be getting their injuries during these damn international breaks? We have seen it time and time again. Zinchenko, Odegaard, Calafiori, and now Saka on top of that as well. Boss says, I don't think it's the amount of games. It's about, we've done that one. Late Bloomer says, at the club, they play 3 to 6 games in 2 weeks. At their countries, they play in 2 weeks. Technically, they get more rest. I mean, it's not 2 in 2 weeks, is it? It's 2 in about 5 or 6 days that they play those international games. So it's not quite as you describe it. Jimmy says, Tom, unrelated, but have you seen the video of Flex doing an impression of expressions? It's so good. You need to check it out. It's on DR Clips, and he does a perfect Thai impression as well. I haven't, Jimmy. I can't say I have seen that, to be fair, but I reckon Flex was properly responding to expressions is rather personal vent at him more recently after the Man United game. Of course, Man United don't really have a leg to stand on at the moment either, but I tell you what I did see that I thought was brilliant. This Spurs fan, she produces a video where she talks about the worst thing in the world is supporting Tottenham. Includes quite a lot of swear words, so I can't play it for you. But you should be able to find it. I don't know if I've retweeted it or not, but it was absolutely brilliant. It just summed up what it must be like to be a Spurs fan in the most perfect possible way. Olawale says, I was just praying Rice collected a red card yesterday because I know he will play 90 minutes against Finland. Julian says, we need to look at this injury in the same way that we did with Odegaard, how to play without Saka. It's a scary thought to be without him, but under diversity, we will see what this team is capable of. Now, when Arsenal beat Manchester City last season at the Emirates Stadium, you may remember that we didn't have either of Bukayo Saka or Gabriel Martinelli from the start of that game. Gabriel Martinelli, of course, came off the bench and eventually did indeed win Arsenal the game, but we didn't have him from the start. And Arsenal's lineup that day was rather interesting. In fact, I'm trying to bring it up on the screen here. Let me just get the lineup for you. So the lineup that day was White, Saliba, Gabriel, Zinchenko, Odegaard, Rice, Jorginho, and then Jesus on the right, and Nketiah up front, and Trossard on the left. That was our team that day. And then we brought Havertz, Martinelli, and Partey off the bench. Now, against Liverpool, if we do indeed have Saka out for that game for whatever reason. You've got, of course, Havertz starting over Nketiah, which is a massive upgrade. Trossard and Martinelli can play. Martinelli could play on the right-hand side. We've done that in the past. Jesus, of course, can also play in a wide area. Raheem Sterling is also another option that we've got. We've also got the opportunity, if we want, because Trossard has been deputising for Odegaard. If Odegaard is out, maybe it's time against Bournemouth that we move Trossard into a wide area and play Nwaneri and give Nwaneri the opportunity to play. And of course, then you've got that Shakhtar Donetsk game the week after. You could play Nwaneri in back-to-back games before the game against Liverpool. I know it seems mad. He's only 17. I get it. But the pressure is there and the absences are there that it might be a case of needs must in this scenario. I think it's something that we need to consider. It's something that we need to think about. So let's just wait and see what happens. But we beat Manchester City without Saka starting, without Martinelli starting. We managed to beat them with Nketiah up front, with Jesus on the right, with, Jorginho in the starting of the midfield. Like, we have got a lot better since that game. We've got a better depth since that game. And we have the opportunities, we have the options to try and use the players that we need them for as well. Lars says the Premier League needs to do the NHL like they do in hockey. Demand very high insurance fees for using their players, and that way the national teams won't play the star players in minor games. Lars, can you send me some information about that? I'd love to read more into that. Of course, when those players are injured, what happens is that at the moment the federations pay the wages of the players while they are out of those competitions. Nell says, what did you think was wrong with yesterday's lineup and who was missing for you? The defence was non-existent for me and consisted of City's players in centre-back positions as well. Well, of course, with England's setup, there's always this feeling that England don't really have that good of a midfield at the moment. They have a lot of attacking talent, as we know, and that, I think, gives a temptation for, well, to be honest, for a manager to just try to overplay the number of attacking players in the team. We started Anthony Gordon, Jude Bellingham, Phil Foden, Cole Palmer, and Saka all in the same team. These are all attacking midfielders / wingers in the case of Saka and Gordon. If you want to play Saka and Gordon, play Saka and Gordon. But you can't play Bellingham as kind of this false nine, and you can't play Foden in this role either. It should have been, in my opinion, if you wanted to use this team, Bellingham should have been alongside Rice in a box-to-box role, a little bit like, Rice plays for Arsenal to a degree. Palmer then plays the 10, Saka on the right, Gordon on the left, and Watkins up front. Find that balance. Like, you don't need to play in that way. It baffled me to the way in which we were approaching the game. John Stones is an excellent defender, but the role that he plays for City has got to be a different role when he plays for England. Trent Alexander-Arnold as well, a very attacking, forward-thinking right back. Rico Lewis playing left back as well. There's not much balance in that back line. There's not much balance there at all. And so I think you have someone like Tino Livramento potentially, obviously, who's played quite well for Newcastle. Yes, he's not the most kind of like enamoring defender in the world, but it's more about balance. Kyle Walker was also on the bench for this game as well. It just seemed like Mark Guehi, of course, too. What you could have done is you could have put Levi Colwill kind of as a left-sided player. You could have had Guehi next to him and John Stones and then Trent. So it kind of merges to a back three and you get more of a balance. But I just felt with Lewis and Trent and then the attacking players that were on the pitch, it was so random. So random. RRDM says we should manage expectation for who we may likely replace him with. Sterling, Jesus, and Nwaneri are good options. Saka needs rests. Paul said, why did England pick a FIFA 24 type team? Pick all your attacking players and play them out of position and then just hope for the best. CJ Dan says, I'd rather see the Sterling or Ethan than Jesus at the moment. And I don't think many people would disagree with you, to be fair. Nick says, do the national team cover the salary for players that are injured or is it only for club games? So the national team cover the salary for players that are injured throughout the period of their injury, is my understanding of how it happened. So when Gabriel Jesus was missing all that time, the Brazilian Federation were paying his wages for Arsenal at that time because he got injured on duty with Brazil at the World Cup. That's my understanding. That's what I believe it to be. Dan says, Tom, do you know anything about Samuele Ricci? Wasn't we linked to him like a while ago? Italian midfielder? Let me have a quick look. I think we were linked to him, weren't we, when he was at Empoli before he moved to Torino? Yeah, so he moved to Torino in 2022. He's now 23 years of age. He's now getting called up seniorly for the Italian national side. He plays more so as a defensive style midfielder. We were linked to him a little while ago. Actually, I think we were linked to him 2 years ago. But quite diminutive. He's not like, I wouldn't have him down as kind of a Arteta style player for a midfielder because he's quite diminutive. So maybe someone that we go back in for. Have you heard any links to it? Have you seen links to him again? But can't say that I've seen or heard anything about Arsenal more recently at all. And of course, talking about the England Greece game, we can't really not mention, and not through not wanting to, but just certainly because it's come up at this time. But really sad news about the passing of George Baldock, who of course was a Greece international, played many years at Sheffield United, was a teammate of Aaron Ramsdale's. Sadly lost his life a couple of days ago. We found out this news, and a regular Premier League performer. Really sad. And so thoughts are certainly with his friends and family at what I'm sure isn't a horrendous time, taken far too young. And yeah, really sad news that came out. And it was nice to see kind of the tributes yesterday between Greece and England. The irony of the timing of that game between Greece and England is not lost, I don't think, on anyone. So yeah, that was really gutting news to hear someone lost so incredibly young in the sport. So yeah, thoughts and prayers, as always, are with those close and affected by that news. And that, I'm sorry to end on a sad note, but that is going to be the end of today's show. I'll be back with you tomorrow morning, bright and early at 8 o'clock once again for any further updates on Bukayo Saka, anything we hear in the next 24 hours. Of course, there are more games on the international scene as well that are worth, mentioning as well. There's more to come. We would have had Partey playing today, but Partey, of course, isn't. Our next games are actually on Saturday. So David Raya and Mikel Moreno will be in action for Spain on Saturday evening against Denmark. Poland will be playing Portugal, so Kivior will be in action. And then there's more games on Sunday as Finland take on England, and we'll know more maybe then about Rice and Saka and their status as well. Have a fantastic Friday. Enjoy yourselves. I'll see you tomorrow morning. And I look forward to bringing you all the latest updates. Stay safe, stay well, stay happy and respectful. And as always, up the Arsenal.